Hey everyone, and thanks for checking out another video. We're at the Cleveland Cliffs, Middletown Works in Middletown, Ohio, and you're looking at the basic oxygen furnace in the red building, and then the blast furnace beyond that in the center of your screen. This is the fifth in a series I'm putting together on the raw materials used to make steel in the United States. I'll put links to the previous videos in the description. As usual, I'll include extra footage at the end. I'll also include timestamps if you want to jump around. Today we'll be looking at how the iron ore, coking coal, and limestone are added to the blast furnace to create molten iron. From there, we'll see how the liquid metal is taken to the basic oxygen furnace and what's done with the slag created in the process. First up in the process, we have blast furnace number 3. This is the only blast furnace at the works. You can see the stoves behind it. That's Tilden mined ore in the foreground. Those dump trucks give you a sense of scale of just how massive this facility is. We've seen how the iron ore and coke are unloaded and sent to storage. Let's see how they're sent to the blast furnace. Here's where the magic happens. Well, actually under those hopper cars. That's the highline they're on. Underneath there is where the storage containers for the iron ore, coke, and limestone are. Eventually, the ingredients would be carried up to the top of the blast furnace and then dropped in to become molten metal. This image by the National Iron and Steel Heritage Museum shows the process. Here we see how the highline is set up. These hoppers are sitting on top of the storage piles of ore, coke, and limestone. A computer then calculates how much is needed of what ingredient, and the skip cars are automatically loaded with that correct amount. Real quick, let's take a look at the iron ore pellets or taconite. Believe it or not, you can actually buy these on eBay or Etsy. They apparently fall out of the bottom of the ore cars, so if you live near some tracks that frequently has an ore train, I bet you might be able to find some. The pellets are between a quarter and a little over half an inch in diameter, or between 6 and 16 millimeters. Here they are next to some American coins. They're typically between 64 and 72% iron. As you can imagine, they are heavy for their size. They remind me of rough ball bearings. If you've ever dragged your hand over a wrought iron fence that's starting to rust, that's what they feel like. They're very rough to the touch. And then here we see them next to some Cocoa Puff cereal to give you another size comparison. If you're into this stuff or know someone who is, I think it'd actually be a pretty cool gift. I'd like to give a big thank you to Tyler for helping me out with these pellets. And thank you for this and all the help you've given me over the past few years. I and the audience really do appreciate it. Here's a better view of the highline and how things are situated. Those hoppers have the main ingredients needed for steel. The two closest to us have HBI, or hot briquetted iron from the Toledo Direct Reduction Plant. We'll learn more about that in a future video. But the short version is, it's a high quality refined iron ore. And check out right here, you can see the HBIs being unloaded from the hopper and falling into the storage area below. The two furthest away are filled with coke. That middle hopper has high cal or limestone in it. That's used to remove impurities in the molten iron and steel. You'll see it again when we look at the slag from the furnace. A different view shows us two workers on the highline. Those flamethrowers are actually natural gas lances. They're used when it's cold out and they need to thaw the hoppers a bit to get whatever's inside unloaded. We can see little piles of each ingredient from where they're dumped into the holding bins. This little cart is used to shovel the excess into the storage. And this gives you a better look at things. Keep an eye on the left side of your screen and you see the skips going up and down. This conveyor belt is dumping coke, and this one handles iron ore. There we see a locomotive pull away. I'm guessing these hoppers have just been dropped off. Now let's follow one of the skips up to the top of the furnace to be dumped. Coke, iron ore, and limestone are called charge, and it's constantly being added while the furnace is operating. The term blast furnace came about because this process uses a literal blast of hot air. When I say hot, I mean hot. We're talking anywhere from 1400 to 2100 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's get a better idea of what's going on inside the furnace. The skip cars empty their charge into the first chamber in what's called the small bell. When it's time, the small bell will open up and then the charge falls into the big bell highlighted here. And notice right here as it rises up, I believe this controls the small bell, and as this end rises up, that means the other side is being pushed down and the small bell opens to allow the charge to fall into the large bell underneath. Now once that closes, the large bell can then open up and allow the charge into the blast furnace. Because of the two-phase system, the blast furnace is able to maintain temperature and pressure because it's never open to the outside air and is able to be continually fed with the ingredients needed for molten iron. One more time, but this time from the side. I think it's coke being added to the furnace because they're larger chunks, but it could be iron ore as well. As we fly around, I didn't notice this until I watched the clip a few times. At first, I thought those back wheels just actually came off the track as the front rolled over, but a closer look shows there's a second track there for the back wheels to ride up on. It looks like they have a second set, or maybe just extended wheels to guide the skip car up in the air on those tracks to make it easier to empty. This must also help keep it on the track when doing this maneuver. Real quick, these rounded off cylinders behind the furnace are the ovens, which heat the blast of air that makes the furnace work. That massive red building behind the structure is where the basic oxygen furnace is. These ovens heat the air to nearly 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's then blasted at nearly 200 miles an hour into the lower section of the furnace. Temperatures can then reach up to nearly 4,000 degrees inside. The iron content in the ore drips to the bottom of the furnace. The limestone is in charge of cleanup. It binds with any impurities and creates a waste layer of slag which floats on top of the molten metal. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage from inside the blast furnace at the Middletown works, but let's get a general idea of how they work. The molten ore is held inside the furnace by a clay plug toward the bottom of the unit. When it's time to tap, a drill or oxygen lance punches through the plug, creating a dazzling display of sparks. Once opened, the liquid metal flows out like a river of iron. The limestone binds to the impurities in the liquid metal, creating a slag that floats on top of the molten iron. It's then diverted to a dump pile we'll see in just a bit. There's a skimmer block inside the cast house that allows the iron to flow beneath it, while at the same time pushing back the slag, forcing it toward the slab pits. Now, I'm told this is extremely efficient and little to no iron is lost in this process. Like I mentioned, it's hot in the blast furnace. Crews try to keep iron temperatures around 2,700 degrees. Just 200 degrees cooler and it begins to clog up the furnace. During normal operations, crews cast all day. A cast can last 1.5 to 4 hours. If it's a shorter cast, workers will wait until after the cast to run the cars over to the basic oxygen furnace. If it's on the longer side, the locomotive from the BOF will come over to the furnace and grab filled cars to take back to the BOF. There's a 20 to 60 minute gap while crews switch to the other cast house. Keep in mind, this is only stock footage just to give you an idea of what it's like inside. I haven't seen what the inside of Middletown Works looks like. I will include a link to a video created by AK Steel about the mill if you'd like to learn more. Here's another look at the flowing iron. Once the cast is finished flowing, workers will then replace the clay plug and begin the process all over again. In Middletown, there's an east and west cast house. We're looking at the west. They're situated to the left and right of the blast furnace. Here's where that liquid iron heads after being tapped, the belly of these torpedo or bottle cars. Several are lined up waiting to be loaded. I've always found it incredible that the iron doesn't cool enough to form a hard layer on top and ruining the load and the car. The cars are lined with what are known as refractory bricks that are capable of not only withstanding the incredible heat from the molten iron, but also able to keep the inside hot enough to keep that metal in liquid state. Does anyone know how often they have to chip away the cooled iron from the tops of these cars? It looks like the molten iron clings to the outside when they're rolled and unloaded. And listen to this, these cars are so well insulated, they're able to keep the iron in a molten state for a certain amount of time in case there's some sort of delay. If worst comes to worst and they're not able to unload the iron before it may harden, the crew's forced to dump the liquid metal before it solidifies and ruins the car. So I didn't notice until I was watching this footage at home on a larger monitor, but you're actually seeing a cast right now. Look at car number 22 on the left. You can see the stream of molten metal flowing on the right side of the opening. It looks like a red-hot iron rod to me. The flames we're seeing here are actually gas lances blowing a flame into the cars. That's to prevent smoke from blocking the window at the ladle stand where workers are watching the cars being filled. To the left is the slag pile. We'll check that out in a bit. As we look up, notice the skip cars continue to fill the furnace. A different day shows us 2 bottle cars filled and waiting for their next stop, the basic oxygen furnace. As we sink down to get a better view, you can see the limestone, iron ore, and coke secondary storage piles. Here we see a worker flipping a switch so that he can couple another ladle car before pulling it back and then throwing a second switch. That's smoke coming out of the cars. They're going to get set off until several have been filled, and then another locomotive from the BOF will gather them and take them over to the basic oxygen furnace. This locomotive will remain here at the furnace while this side is casting. Here's a look at the inside of some other cars that have cooled off for just a bit. Looking at the color, I'd imagine the car on the right was poured first, then the middle, and then the left. This wide top-down shot shows the east cast house and the slag pile. Let's take a closer look at that slag pile just after the furnace was tapped. This is from a different day, but that's the east cast house. Molten slag has recently been dumped here. We can see water sprayed on top to help cool it down and solidify it so that it can be removed. As the steam clears, we can see the red-hot slag. Toward the top of the screen, we can see the path of slag takes from the blast furnace. Let's keep watching. I wonder how much iron is lost in this process. We're looking at the west cast house once more, and now we can see how the slag's removed. They don't wait long to start shoving it around. This front loader looks like it's picking up a hot ball of lava. The chains on the tires do provide protection against the red-hot slag. There's also a fire suppression system on the loader if an emergency occurs, and there's a rope on the back to pull the driver out if need be. So what happens to all this slag? Well, it has a lot of uses actually. It's mainly used in the construction industry, including as aggregate for roads, concrete, and other infrastructure projects. It can also be used in the concrete industry as well as insulation, glass production, and more. Notice that massive pipe at the top of the blast furnace. That's where the blast furnace gas, or BFG, leaves the furnace. BFG consists of mostly nitrogen and carbon dioxide, both of which aren't flammable, and there's also carbon monoxide and hydrogen produced. BFG could be a thing of the past though here at the Middletown Works. As of this writing, Cleveland Cliffs plans to replace this blast furnace with a 2.5 metric ton per year hydrogen-ready direct reduction plant. That would be a huge investment in the steel plant and in the city, signaling a decades-long partnership. I believe that new plant is slated to go in this area on the left. Ironically, it's where the old coke ovens were. Here's what it looked like back in 2023 when I first started recording. There was still some of the facility standing. Just about everything in this picture though, except for the conveyor belt crossing the tracks, and this unloader had been torn down. There's still plenty of video left of the facility if you want to check it out. In the next video, we'll take a look at the basic oxygen furnace and how that works. Plus, we'll see some of the next steps in the process, including how steel slabs are moved around and how they resurface those slabs before turning them into finished products. I hope you'll check that out.